Alright, so here's the pattern I decided to go with. You can basically make this any shape you want. The sport is really new, so a lot of people are experimenting with a lot of different shapes. But anyway, just got a piece of cardboard. I traced out a design that I wanted. So this is the way the pattern looks when it's done. So we're going to do half a pattern now, and so both sides are absolutely symmetrical. We'll put this on the Divinycell, flip it over, and trace the other side. Alright, so this is what I'm using for my core, the Divinycell H60. 1 inch. Okay, so here's the pattern. You notice I made that center line. So these are the things I'll be shaping the Divinycell with. Some sanding screen, rasp, just sanding blocks. That's basically it. And here's my helpers. That's Brooks, he's 14. There's Cooper, taking a nap. Daisy. And that's another helper, but she's not doing much work. It's Kim. Okay, so I'm done with the rasp. I got everything nice and squared up, got the edges cleaned up. So I'm gonna go, what I'll do is I'll put a bevel along, I'll knock that edge off. Here's the beveled edge I put on. Of course, this is going to be rounded. So I beveled both sides, and now what I'm doing, I'm knocking down the bevel. So I'm going to get rid of this new edge I created, and then this edge. Alright, so next I'm going to take the sanding screen and a sanding block, flexible, soft, and I'm going to go along and I'll knock off any high spots, low spots, any of the lines, and then I'll combine whatever lines I see so everything blends nice and smooth. All done with the rails. Came out really nice. Alright, next is the fin boxes, which is actually the foil tracks, and they'll be going right into here. Next I'll be making the template for the foil tracks. These are just longboard tracks that would normally go in a longboard on a surfboard for the fins. The two of these, of course, will ride like that. So that makes the foil adjustable forward or backward. I traced it, traced the holes, took the fin boxes, lined them up to where they're supposed to go, traced around them, and now I'll cut this out. Alright, today I'm going to be putting in the fin boxes, the foil track. The plan is you want to make an I-beam. So the fin box will go in like that. I'll cut completely through the board, so there'll be 2 holes in the board. Okay, and then the top layer, which is the deck, is going to have a layer of carbon fiber, and then a bigger layer, a 3rd layer, and then the 4th layer, which will cover the board completely. Okay, same thing on the bottom. Small layer covering the edges, a little bit bigger, bigger, and then a piece covering the entire bottom. Alright, so this is the side view of the fin box. So that's the plan. So that way you form like an I-beam. That. So that gives it strength on the top and bottom. Alright, so I'll go ahead and I've marked this out. I'll just place this on here, line it up with the center lines, cut it out with a knife, epoxy these in. I'm in about 2.5 inches from the tail. This will matter depending on the size of board you have. It may be farther forward, maybe a little bit farther backwards, but that's probably about as far back as you're going to want to go. All right, so got that. You see they fit in nicely. They're a little bit tight, but yeah, the foam's really easy to sand, so it's no problem making them a little bit bigger. But anyway, this is the bottom of the board now, so remember to put these in on the bottom. But yeah, so after I epoxy it in, I'll grind that down, so that'll be perfectly level with the bottom. I'll be flat on the board, so that looks nice. All right, so next step is to epoxy them in. So this is what I'm going to be using to set the tracks in, the foil tracks. Epoxy glue. It's a 2-part mix. I got this at a local fiberglass supplier. It's fairly expensive, but if it works, it's definitely worth it. So I mix up the epoxy. This has about a 20 to 30 minute working time. Definitely put some tape around the foil tracks. Okay, so I got epoxy here and in here. We'll just set this in. Make sure it's the bottom. So be fairly generous when you're putting the epoxy in here. You want it to completely fill that gap. You don't want any voids in there. Do much in a west wind. So, the underside, nice and get that all nice and smooth and even. Make sure there's no air pockets. Probably within an hour I'll remove the tape while the resin is still pliable enough so you don't, so it's not rock hard, otherwise you're gonna have to cut it out. So just remember to remove the tape before it completely sets. All right, I let this set up overnight, and now I'm going to grind down this lip that is left, and I'll make it flush with the bottom of the board. All right, so I'll be using this disc sander with some 40 grit, safety goggles, and don't forget to tape off the area, just like you did, or just like I did when I epoxied the fin boxes in. All right, so you can see it came out nice and flat and level, really nice. All right, today I will be glassing and vacuum bagging. So I'll show you from the top layers towards the core. This is the breather cloth. This goes on the top. Okay, this absorbs the excess resin. Then this is the peel ply. This prevents the resin from sticking to the carbon fiber, and when it squeezes down and vacuums the board, you need a layer between the carbon and the vacuum bag so it doesn't stick, obviously, common sense. So anyway, that's what that's for. It's like a non-stick layer. Then I've got a full layer of 5.5 ounce. Goes from nose to tail. Just want to peel them back. And then I've got another layer, about a third, cut at an angle. Okay, that will be the second from the last layer. Got another layer, same glass, 5.5, carbon fiber. And then what I'm doing actually is beefing up the area around the foil tracks. I've Okay, and then I've got one final layer there. That's just a small layer, and that will cover foil tracks, and this is the top of the deck. You see that? So here's a crash course on how to vacuum bag. I've got my little scaled down model here. This is the bagging material, tacky tape. There's my surfboard. So you get your vacuum bag material, you lay it out, you put down your tacky tape, comes in a roll like that, goes along the edge. You'll set your board inside. This is not exactly to scale, but you'll seal the bag. So you'll want to press really good along this edge. You don't want any leaks. It's going to seal all the way up to where the seam is. And then you'll take your vacuum tubing. You want to cover the end with some breather cloth, or even better, they sell a connector that'll give you a nice tight seal. So you put that into the bag off to the side of the board, okay? And then that will go to your pump, which is right here. That goes into there, okay? And then you'll need these connections. So you'll need this part. You're gonna need this nipple here, and then of course you're gonna need a vacuum gauge, and minus 30 is where the gauge wants to read once it's under full vacuum. One interesting thing about vacuum bagging is that the vacuum bag process, it produces over 1,400 pounds of clamping force over the entire laminate. I mean, imagine 1,400 pounds. There's no way you could ever do that without the use of a vacuum bag. All right, so that's it. Basically pretty simple, straightforward. You'll be amazed at how nice the board comes out. All right, so I got it. It's under vacuum right now. Everything turned out pretty good. It's hard to video because you got to really rush around, so I couldn't video the process. But anyway, there it is. I put a little bit of rocker in it, and you can see I got that weight there. Pretty simple process. Just a pipe. Just what I thought was about right for rocker. This core material, the Divinycell, bends fairly easy, so this will stay under vacuum for like 8 hours. So that'll put a nice little rocker into it. You can see the resin coming through right there. That's that cloth that absorbs it, the breather cloth. And there's the vacuum pump. The thing about the vacuum pump is you got to make sure you can see the reading. 30, that's where you want it. That means there's no leaks. You can easily get leaks along these seams here. So it takes a little bit. It took me a few minutes to get it to where there was no leaks. But yeah, once you got it, just check it every once in a while, make sure it's not leaking. All right, so let this sit for about 8 hours and see how it turns out. Whew. It's tough getting up. I'm freaking light as a feather. All right, so today I'm getting ready to glass the bottom. Obviously, I'm gonna need to fill this in because I'm gonna glass right over it, and then after it dries, I'll go back and I'll route those grooves out or cut them out with the Dremel. So I put some PVA. It's a non-stick coating. I put that on the inside. Had some little pieces of Divinycell I cut out to fit in there. So that pretty much, you want to make it absolutely flush. But you can see there's still little grooves and things. So I'm going to take some wax, just candle wax. I'm going to melt that in there. So then when I cut it open, it should be fairly easy to clean out. Action! I've got everything set, ready to go. This is the breather cloth, and then the peel ply, and I've got 4 layers of glass.
underneath. They get progressively bigger. And then I'll put it in the bag and vacuum it down. Live. Should have marked this one too. Get close. Just move around a little bit. It's a good idea to put the thing in. Alright, wrap it around. So we'll lift it up and tuck everything underneath, kind of. All right, so we got the bottom half under vacuum. Everything's good. Got it sealed. Got to make absolutely sure there's no leaks along this edge. Right there, all the way around. This is the connection right here. Make sure that's good and sealed. I've got some breather cloth wrapped around the end of the vacuum hose, and that's to prevent the plastic from being sucked up into the hose. So, leave this under vacuum for 8 hours. Alright, so next I'll be putting on a filler coat, and that'll fill in any little imperfections, little pinholes, things like that, just to seal the board out, make it nice and smooth, and get it ready for the hot coat. So the hot coat, there's less sanding, it comes out a little smoother. But for that I'll just be mixing the resin and catalyst together, the epoxy, and adding micro balloons to make like a paste. Alright, now I'm putting a skim coat on the bottom. I taped the rails like I did before. Lightly sanded the skim coat that I had previously put on the top, just along the rail. Alright, so I let the skim coat set up overnight. I'm just going to lightly scuff up the surface, some of the high spots. I got some 80 grit, a sanding block, and a soft sanding block. So I'll just take that off and get it nice and smooth and prepared for the hot coat. The ratio is about 1 teaspoon for every 4 ounces of pigment to resin. So I'm going to mix that up. I'm going to mix the pigment into the epoxy resin before I add the hardener. All right, and then what I'll do is I've already prepped the board. I'll wipe it down with a tack cloth right before I do the final hot coat with the blue epoxy pigment. So next I'm going to be cutting out the foil tracks. I can still make out just ever so slightly where they are underneath the glass. So I just put a little mark. I'll drill some holes, and then I'm going to use the Dremel tool to cut it out with the cutting wheel. Next, I'll be doing the final sanding. So I've got a sanding desk, soft pad. All right, I've got some 320 on there, and then I'll go over the whole board, both sides, and then I'm going to go to 400 wet dry, and then I'll go to 600 wet dry. So yesterday I taped off the rails, and underneath the blue tape I painted that yellow. All right, so today I let that set up and dry good. Today I'll be going over the blue part with green. So I'll have alternating yellow and green. We've come down to the final step, and that'll be applying the deck track.